And just to remind everybody, the session will be recorded. Good morning, everyone. I'm Kathy Ballinger, Managing Director of York County Community Foundation's Embracing Aging, and welcome to our online series to help disrupt negative thinking about aging. At York County Community Foundation, we believe that we need to have a community that is respectful and inclusive of all ages. And we recognize that negative thinking about aging gets in the way of that. So we've designed a series of online sessions to talk with people about their aging experiences, have them share the things that are going well for them, concerns, insights, wisdom, perspectives, all in hopes that it will help us as individuals think more positively about our own aging and older adults as a group, but also encourage us to take action to build a community that is not only a great place to grow up, but grow older. Our session today is being recorded. And if you'd like to learn more about Embracing Aging, please visit our website at www.embracingaging.org. That's also in the chat box. And if you're on Facebook, please follow us at YCCF Embracing Aging. Our format for today's session is we're going to have question and answer for maybe the first 15 to 20 minutes, and then we'll open it up to everybody to ask questions and share thoughts and perspectives. During that first 20 minutes, we ask that you mute yourself, and then you can either make comments or do reactions in the chat box, or then in the last 10 minutes, unmute yourself to answer questions. So joining us today is Carolyn Brady-Beeler. Now, her name may be familiar to you because she has spent 17 years in radio as a morning news anchor, reporter, and news director at various stations across the East Coast, including 10 years at Wink 104 Radio in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. She now has a business called Story Catchers, where they record life stories and memories of loved ones. Welcome, Carolyn.
Thank you, Kathy, and hello to everybody. I'm excited to be here and hope we can save more stories.
Excellent. Well, we're excited to have you and to have everyone joining us this morning as well. So let's go back, about 20 years ago, I think it was, Carolyn, you had shared with me, you were driving to Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania to interview your aunt, who was the only remaining relative on that side of the family. Now, you told me that you had a list of questions in hand. So I want to ask, what was going through your mind while you were driving there? And then tell us what happened during the interview that impacted you so strongly.
Well, going through my mind was anticipation, obviously, but also concern that she wouldn't want to do it anymore. So I distinctly remember driving there, the 2.5 hours, and had my equipment with me and everything ready, and just thinking I was going to get there and she would just be like, I don't really want to do it anymore. I'm not feeling comfortable. Let's just sit down and have a beer or something like that. And so all my plans would have been, and then I was just, it didn't work, So that was what I definitely remember thinking. And then you mentioned during the interview, I realized she did have everybody has a story to tell, but she also just carried insecurities from when she was younger. And even though somebody could be, 80 years old, 90 years old, there's still that child inside of them. And so many things about when they're younger, it's still there. And so asking them questions and bringing about just things in their life and them being vulnerable, I don't know. I just feel it's what everybody needs. They just don't know they need it. And that's what I found with her. After the interview, I realized no one had ever asked her these questions before. And she needed to know that her life mattered. And
I know you said, excuse me, Carolyn, that she was the only living relative on that side of the family. So was it your idea to ask the questions, or did the family as a whole said, hey, we need to capture the history on that side, or how did that come to be?
Yeah, that was my idea. And it was my dad's oldest sister. So he was still around, but he didn't know anything. He's like, only person that knows that stuff is Aunt Betty. And if anything, it wasn't other people asking me to do it. Other people were more like, I don't know if she will. I don't know if she's going to do it. I don't know if you should, maybe you should, so I didn't get the encouragement. And that's probably why I was a little anxious going there. But it was exact opposite of what people told me. It was, yeah, she wanted to do it.
Oh, super. And you mentioned that she carried insecurities with her from when she was younger. I mean, not to break any confidence, but did that impact her aging? Did you find that experiences from younger impacted her aging as she was growing older?
Yeah, she felt she didn't have a story to tell.
Okay.
So everything, when I went there, she thought I was just going to be asking about her ancestors and, who came over on the boat and then what happened and what did all your sisters do and your mom and your grandparents. But then once I started asking her about her life, yeah, she was more like, oh, you don't want to hear about that. And that was what made me realize that was the story. So this was before the business started and everything. This was just, I was kind of doing it for fun. And that was what made me realize, wow, it's her story I want to hear. I don't want to hear about all the people, we don't know. And that stuff's important, and genealogy is very important, but her story was what was the best.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I guess either 2021 or 2022 will be about 10 years that the Story Catchers has been in business. Is that correct?
That's right. Yeah.
All right. So since you left journalism to do this, and tell us over the years, what have been some of your favorite stories or experience based on the interviews that you've had with older people?
There's so many, but there are a couple that stick out. And there was one interview I had done at Country Meadows in Mechanicsburg. And I remember the daughter had asked if I would come and interview her dad, but her dad and her mom were living together. And so I said, well, what about your mom? And she's like, well, yeah, you can interview her too. My dad is a war vet. And I was like, okay, well, yeah, if we can interview both of them, that would be great. So she said, he probably won't talk about the war. And so I was prepared for that, but I knew also just from other experiences that a lot of times it's just hard for people to talk to family members about their experience in the war. I don't know why. I think it's just, again, a vulnerability, and maybe they don't want to cry. They don't want to show that. They want to be strong, especially that generation. So he did talk about it. He talked about his time in Normandy, and he was the only survivor of a tank explosion. And he talked about, just the regret he had and everything that went along with that. But even though that is crazy, interesting story, the part I love the most was when I asked him about when he returned from the war, and he hitchhiked, he took the boat over, returned to America, and he hitchhiked home. And I said, how was the reunion with your fiance, who was sitting right next to him? And he's like, oh, I'm sure it was great. And I go, do you have any details? And he's like, oh, I don't really remember. I'm sure it was, what, great. So then I interviewed her and I said, what can you tell us about that? And right away, she was just like, oh, I remember that. And her voice, starts to, cry. And she said, I was outside and she's in the front yard and she sees him coming down the road and the hug and the embrace and everything was just, and all I could remember was I was so glad I was interviewing her and then he's like, oh yeah, I remember that. And he was like, there was a lot of kissing going on, and so those two together sharing that story, I think that's one of my favorite ones. And especially since like the daughter thought, well, I definitely want my dad's story, but to have both is just, yeah, it's the best.
Any others that you'd like to share?
Yes. Pride, it's nothing I can really reveal, but another thing which happened actually twice, but the first time it happened, it caught me off guard. And that was a woman I was interviewing in Westminster, Maryland, and she was talking about something that was happening in the news now. A man, who was being investigated for something. And she said, that happened to me when I was younger. it kind of, I was like, what do you mean it happened to you? And she said, that happened to me too. And it was just something that she never told anybody. And she was just abused in a certain way. And I listened, and even going through my mind, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, this is going to shock her family that she's saying this. And then when she was done, she said, don't put that in there. Mm-hmm. And I said, oh, okay, you don't want anybody to know that. And she said, no, I needed to get it out.
Oh, wow.
And so that was maybe, it's only happened like 2 or 3 times, but at the beginning of every interview, I just say, whatever you want to keep in, we will keep in. If you decide tomorrow, take that out, it'll be taken out. Because just a lot of times people need to release things and they don't even know they need to. Right. You know, they just, you know, they realize it as they're saying it that, you know, I've never told anybody this and I think I need to say it. And sometimes they leave it in and sometimes they're like, okay, I've said it, now take it out.
Yeah. Wow. Oh my. So Carolyn, as a member of Generation X, how has this experience impacted your own aging? How has hearing these stories, helped you? Has it debunked any myths that you had heard about growing older or thought about growing older? And has it caused you to think or plan differently for your older decades?
Yeah, it's impacted my aging by helping me to see that we're never too old to begin again and to begin a new adventure. And I think I was surprised by the amount of people that have started new lives like 3 times, and that it's okay to change. And you know, it's just so encouraging to see people go through it and they're happy every time they improve their lives, even though something may seem like a tragedy at the beginning, they made it through. So a debunked myth that divorce is a failure. So that's what I think I used to think. So many people find happiness after changing their lives, kind of as I said before. And I think I maybe many people grow up thinking no matter what, stick with it. And, you know, even if you're unhappy and just make it work. And I think after interviewing so many people, it just showed that, you know, no, there is other happiness out there. So, and I'm not saying don't try, but it just, that's one of the myths that I think changed in my life from doing all the interviews and just hearing all the different things people go through. You said plan differently. Well, I have completed all my estate planning, and I also, and I'm sure that came from it, just kind of being prepared and, you know, not leaving my family wondering. And also I realized I won't move too far away from family, because that was one regret that many people had, that they either retired and moved and were far away from family, or they just realized everybody always realizes the importance of family and just not go too far away.
Wow, thank you for sharing. I want to share with you, in case you didn't see in the chat box, someone put, Elizabeth put, I call it my starter marriage, and then put a smiley face.
Yes, I've heard many different ways of talking about that. Yeah.
Yeah. And you know, one of the things that's interesting, and I was just reading over this a couple years ago, maybe it was 2017, Embracing Aging helped bring Dr. Bill Thomas to York County. He's well known for his work in reframing attitudes around aging. And I was just reading some of what he had shared with us, and he had talked about how he believes the happiest decade in one's life is your 70s. And followed closely by your 80s. And he believes that your happiest year is age 78. And I was just like thinking about that and thinking, wow, you know, people continue to always learn new things, create, reinvent themselves. And that's all about what growing older is. And it's just really cool. And I'm looking forward to my 70s.
Right. Yes.
So So for people who are joining us today who might want to record their own stories or capture a story of loved ones, what are some tips you can share with them to help them do this?
Okay, so yes, I have a lot of tips, and if anybody has questions, I'd be happy to take them, because I just feel like I just want to help people and show them how easy it is. So, I mean, obviously plan ahead. If you can have just some basic questions and an outline, you can't have every question because you have to go by what they're saying and actually listen, and not be waiting for the next question. So, but then maybe just to keep it in a timeline. And that's what I try to do. So we may be talking about childhood, and then the person you're interviewing starts to talk about their wife, and that's fine. Don't stop them, but then just bring it back around and be like, okay, so let's get back to high school, or did you have, when was your first kiss? And then try and, keep it, but then, yeah, just be flexible in that way. But always include an introduction. So, and there's so many ways. Another thing is there's so many ways to record. You can buy a digital recorder and all that, but also you can just do it on your cell phone, and you can download an app. There's many to choose from, and then just use a USB or flash, cable, and download it into your computer to save that audio. So very important to save their voice. So include an introduction just so people know in 30 years who the interviewer was and what the date was and where you were when you did it. If you're unsure if you should ask a personal question or emotional question, my advice is ask it. Just ask it. They can always say no, or they can say, I don't really feel comfortable. That's fine, but just do it. You'll never regret it, because people want to be asked that stuff. So I think that's one misconception, is people think, oh, I can't do that. Oh, they're going to get upset. And it's like, no, it's just nobody's ever asked them, and they want to be asked this stuff. They want to talk about their life. So let me see if I have don't correct them about how they remember a person or an event. I don't have that problem, because everybody I'm interviewing, I don't know ahead of time, but most of the people, like right now I'm giving advice to, it may be a family member. And so you're going to have that urge to go, wait a minute, that's not how it happened. Or, well, they're not that bad of a person. Why are you saying that about them? Let them have their feelings. This is their story. This isn't you interviewing them, and it's your job to correct everything they're saying. So that's the main thing, is just let them have their feelings and not be judged. So that's very important. See if there's anything else. I think I wrote down a couple of things, and mainly, like I said, just focus. It's all about them. And they may ask you something about yourself and you can answer, but then just quickly bring it back to them, because, it's all about them. And then at the end, just thank them and let them know how much their story mattered. So, and that's all. And then it helps to put a close to the interview. But the main thing is just to save their memories and their voice. And if it's not perfect, that's okay. At least you've done it.
Those are great tips. And I will share with everybody on the call, one of the things that I do is I save voicemail messages, because I always want to be able to have people's voices. And 2 years ago, when I had switched phones, I realized that some of the voicemail messages didn't get carried over. And I lost a dear friend of mine, an older friend of mine, in December. And I realized that I don't have her voice anymore. And it's just like, oh my gosh, all the times that we were together, had I just, did a video clip of us, because we love to sing together. We love to talk about different things. And had I just captured that, and yeah, so I'd like to now open it up to everybody on the call and see if anyone has any questions for Carolyn, any thoughts, tips, ideas. We love to hear if any of you have captured someone's story, or maybe had a family member who has. Just share what your thoughts are. And you can do that either by unmuting yourself or putting it in the chat box.
Kathy, I just wanted to mention, and you probably remember this, and I know Diana, you do, the program that we did here at Windy Hill. I'm the director of Windy Hill and the campus, the senior center here in Spring Grove. But we did a program called Sages and Seekers. And it was an 8-week program where we paired one of our older adults up with a high school student, because we're on the school campus. And the student interviewed the older adult, and then at the end wrote a story. And then we had a program in the evening where we invited families, all of their families, and the student made their presentation and the story that they created about their older adult. And I tell you, the benefits of that program and just some of the things and the relationships that were built out of that program were just phenomenal. And we didn't really give the students a script. We didn't give them a list of questions. You know, it was a gradual thing where we did some get to know you type activities for the first few sessions. And then basically we just put them together. And some of the stories that came out, and I remember specifically some of my members saying, you know, I told that student who I just met more things than I've ever told anyone in my family. Wow. So yeah, it was a really phenomenal program, and it kind of evolved into an intergenerational iPad training, because our people were wanting more technology training. But that was probably one of the my favorite programs that we ever did here at Windy Hill.
Wow, very cool. Brian put in the chat box that he's become a cell phone collector. He keeps the old phones just for that reason. And I wish I would have thought about that, Brian. Thank you for sharing that tip. And then Fiona put, I never thought of proactively recording my husband and myself as a gift for our daughter, for her to have for years from now. But yeah, that's a cool idea, right? Carolyn, Definitely. Have you ever had anybody do it on that way? Do it.
Yes, and definitely I've received recordings. People do it on their phone, and then if they don't know how to transfer it, they've given it to me and I've transferred it and put it onto a CD or a flash drive or something like that. But yeah, even if it's just 10 minutes.
Oh,
yeah.
Carolyn, it's Brian Long. So I have a question. How are you today?
Good.
When you do these recordings, do you then cut a mix of this? I mean, do you do cutting and pasting and things over digitally?
Yes. So I usually, it depends how long it is, but you know, usually they're over an hour, some are 2 hours depending, but I'll edit it. And many times, like if they give a favorite song, you know, I can, you know, add a couple things in there, like fade in their favorite song at the end or something like that. But sometimes during an interview, people take a break, you know, and so I've got to edit out that dead air and stuff like that. But yeah.
Is there something that you do? I mean, do you typically program it as a chronologic interview, or
yeah,
that's typically it?
Yeah, yeah. Like first question is, when were you born?
Yeah.
So let's get started. Just dive right in with when were you born? That's always the first thing I ask. And that's what I would recommend to anybody else. And then it's just gonna, even if you don't have questions, it's just gonna happen naturally.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
I wanted to share that Annette put in the chat box that the sound of someone's voice is what people state that they miss the most about a loved one after they passed. And wanted to ask, does anyone ever bring like a prop or something special to them that they use, not a prop, but like something that's meaningful to them that they use to maybe help break the ice? Have you ever had that?
Just pictures. So yeah, very often, like I'll show up and they'll have kind of pictures set around the table of different things, just to kind of remind them of things. Yeah.
Cool.
Hi, Carolyn. This is Sherry.
Hello.
Hello. You know, I have found that the older that I get, the more I realize I didn't know my family really well. Obviously, I knew who they were and the generations and their names, but I really didn't know a whole lot about them as people. And I regret not having asked those questions. So now I'm in a situation where there is one aunt that's left out of the entire family. I have not seen her in years. I haven't talked to her, but I would love to be in touch. But I'm honestly uncomfortable in reaching out of nowhere just for this reason. How might you suggest I go about doing that?
Yes, that's a very common question. And even people have asked the same question you're asking either a week, and they still don't know just how to say it. And my advice is switch it around. Somebody's doing that to you. Somebody contacted you that you haven't talked to in over a year or whatever, and they're like, I've always, wondered about your story and your my family means so much to me, and just say, I would love to hear your life story. And if somebody asked you that, would you be offended? No, you would be so honored. I mean, almost to tears that somebody wants to hear your story. So I would say, think of that. That's what you will do for her. And you will make her feel so honored and so just happy that you asked.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
So Carolyn, so I'm wondering, have you ever done an interview over like Zoom? And I tell you, my thought is right now, I have an aunt out in Western Pennsylvania, and I have another one in the middle of the state, and I have my mother with me, and she's turning 90 this month. And I thought, I remember back to when she turned 80, and we had sort of a slumber party. And I wish I had recorded the conversations that evening because they were so vivid, and they've lost one of my aunts in the meantime. But I would love to do the three sisters together, but it would mean putting them all on Zoom and recording that. Have you tried doing that? And do you have some tips around that?
Yes. And so definitely one thing that came out of COVID is all our Zoom interviews, and the same way Kathy is doing it right now and recording it. So it's definitely possible, definitely recommended. I'm doing an interview next week. I was called by somebody in Arizona, and her mother lives in North Carolina. So I'll do that as a Zoom interview and do the recording, and then transfer that, and edit it as I was telling Brian, and switch it to a CD. So the only thing, if you want to do it yourself, is I would just get on the Zoom site and research the different ways. You may have to pay. It's a monthly fee, and then you can always cancel it later. But to have more than one person and to record longer than 40 minutes, there are certain, then you have to buy in to Zoom for a month, for the monthly fee. Before, you can do it free, but then you don't have the means to save the recording. Like, there's a certain amount of gigabytes that you can record for free, but not long enough. So you're going to want to, pay for like a month subscription.
Any other thoughts or questions, ideas? Well, I certainly want to thank everybody for joining us today. I know that everybody's time is very valuable, and for you to take time out to be part of this and share this morning, we really appreciate it. Certainly a huge thank you to you, Carolyn, for sharing your thoughts, your ideas, your perspectives. Again, if you'd like to learn more about Carolyn's work, you can visit her website at www.thestorycatchers.com. Our next session, well, let me back up a minute. I'm going to do a blog about what we learned here today and embed a recording of this session into that blog. And we'll be sending that out to everybody within the next 2 weeks. So be looking for that. And we'd love to have you share that with people who who might want to capture someone's story themselves. Our next session for an Embracing Aging online session is going to be a little different. It's going to be on Friday, January 22nd. And we're going to use it as an opportunity to just have people come and share and talk about what their needs and their wants are in York County. What do they want to see to help make York County a better place, to help reduce barriers to aging well, to help increase their accessibility, and to really create an age-friendly York County. So that's going to be our next session, and that's at 10 o'clock on January 22nd. So again, everybody, thank you. Visit our website, www.embracingaging.org, to learn more about our work. And everyone, have a great day. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.